Hi everyone, this is Katie Sweetman with Empowering Astrology, and this is another weekly look at the astrology. This is for the week of May 11th through 17th, 2020. Again, it feels very strange for the word May to leave my mouth because we have been living in slightly unusual times. I hope you all are doing well. On your end, let me know how you're doing. We are an international audience, so I always love to hear where you are connecting from, whether it's in the United States or whether it's in Europe or whether it's in South America or Australia. I seem to have quite a few people in Australia who like to watch. So how are you all doing? This week, it's funny when astrology kind of lines up a certain way, when sort of the hands on the clock sort of change directions all at once or go into new science all at once. And this week we're having one of those weeks. We've got Mercury going into Gemini today, May 11th. We've got Saturn turning retrograde today, May 11th. And then a couple days later, we've got Mars in Pisces. We also have Venus retrograde. And then by the 14th, we also have Jupiter retrograde. That's a lot. And the planets are really just energies both on an archetypical level, energies on this sort of how we're all connected in creation. So when the planets start to change directions, we can see our own lives sort of shift gears, and depending on whether, let's say, Saturn is a big planet for you, or Mercury if you are a Gemini because Mercury is returning home, or if you're a Taurus or a Libra with Venus changing direction, it could mean that, sort of the course of your life, well, that's not the course of your life, the course of your week sort of changes direction. Yeah, Jody is like, oh my word, with the retrogrades we're having, it's really important to understand that the outer planets, so when I say outer planets, I mean Jupiter, I mean Saturn, I mean Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they all spend 5 months out of the year retrograde. So it's not a big deal. This is just part of their natural cycle. And retrogrades are a natural yin and yang, ebb and flow polarity. So when the planet is direct, we sort of feel its energies more active, more forward movement. We're going into new territory. But today, May 11th, Saturn is now retrograde. So Saturn will spend the next 5 months retrograde. It turns direct on the 29th of September. And it's gone as far as it can go this year in the sign of Aquarius. It's turning retrograde just almost at 2 degrees of Aquarius. It's going to go all the way back to 25 degrees of Capricorn. So yes, and I might have said this in a previous video, we're not quite done with Saturn in Aquarius. So really pay attention to the stories that are coming up, the conversations you're having, the decisions you're making. Saturn is a planet that talks about structure. It talks about commitment. It talks about boundaries. I know Saturn has a little bit of a reputation in astrology, but we need Saturn. We need Saturn to hold us accountable. We need Saturn to set goals and to reach milestones. Saturn talks about capital L life. The thing that when you die someday, God forbid, but it will happen. I'm a Scorpio. I'm here to tell you that. But when you look back and your life flashes before you, you're going to remember those milestones events. And that's where Saturn steps in. It talks about marriages, births, big moves, promotions, making these bigger life decisions that sort of set the course and set the direction. So Saturn turns retrograde today, and we're having a check-in with Saturn. And Saturn is saying, hey, how are you doing with capital L life? Are you honoring your commitments? Are you setting boundaries? What are your bigger goals and ambitions? So we might sort of see, life might feel a little bit more serious today. It's not day to lay around. The moon's in Capricorn as I do this live feed, and Capricorn, which is one of Saturn's natural homes. Saturn is at home both in Aquarius and Capricorn. We're having to deal with Capricornian stuff, so it's sort of taking that slightly parental or authoritative look at our life. And so we might, as a result, make some decisions today. We might make some decisions that really set us up for Saturn's arrival back in Aquarius at the end of, or sort of the middle of December of 2020. Saturn in Aquarius in general is teaching, because Saturn teaches. Saturn is about the lessons of life, both on a collective level, but also, each and every one of us has lessons that we came here to learn. Our life has a curriculum, and depending on where Saturn is in our chart, that sort of talks about the curriculum of our life. So today is both a check-in with Saturn and Aquarius and the lessons of Saturn and Aquarius, but it sort of echoes back to the bigger story of our life, these bigger lessons we're learning, these bigger goals we're working towards based on where Saturn was in the sky when we were born. So Saturn in Aquarius is about learning the importance of social connection, which it's not a coincidence, although it's very interesting to see how this is all playing out, that we're in a time since March that's about restricted social connection. Saturn sometimes limits so we can have a different relationship with its energy. So we are suddenly realizing social connection is important, community is important, friendship's important, humanity. Hopefully you're realizing humanity is important. And so Saturn is really going to be teaching us these lessons of Aquarius over the next few years. Aquarius is also science and technology. It's the collective, it's humanity, it's social causes, it's social justice, and it's equity. So this is something that we're still kind of working out. And then Saturn goes back into Capricorn on July 1st. And then we have this little preview. So we're getting this 3-month preview. And do keep in mind, and I did put this in the show notes, I wrote an article back in March called Saturn in Aquarius, sign by sign. And that tells you what part of your life you need to work on while Saturn's in Aquarius, because depending on what sign you are, Aquarius is some part of your chart. So your lessons might be relationship. Your lessons might be career and setting, ambitions. Your lesson might be moving and home and building a foundation for your life. But that really depends on your sign. So if you need that little reminder of where Saturn is checking in today, do read my Saturn and Aquarius sign by sign guide. But yes, this is a preview. So we're sort of getting our marching orders, and we've been exploring Saturn and Aquarius since March 21st when Saturn went into Aquarius. Saturn's starting to pull back. Now we go into a phase of integration, of reflection. It's more yin in its phase. Saturn goes back into Capricorn on July 1st. So from July 1st until December 17th, we're wrapping up Saturn in Capricorn. That's something that began on December of 2017. So pretty much the beginning of 2018 was Saturn in Capricorn. It was kind of a heavy time when Saturn was in Capricorn. We also had the South Node and the eclipses in Capricorn. So I think that really added to Saturn and Capricorn's heaviness. But it means that we're going to go back and hopefully wrap up and make the decisions and the commitments and the restructuring that we need to do once Saturn is back in Capricorn on July 1st. Do keep in mind that Saturn will be retrograde again until until September 29th, when it turns direct at 25 degrees of Capricorn. It's kind of getting close. It doesn't quite get back to Pluto, because we did have that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January, but it will get close. So it might mean that September is a little bit more of a heavier month. We will see what's going on. Just kind of file that information back in your mind. I like Saturn. I know that that's a very strange thing to say because it is the planet of lessons and limitations, but it's also a planet that you need to build. It's a planet that you need to create structure. And without Saturn, there's no form, there's no container. You know, Saturn being the ruler of Capricorn, it's about the material, it's about matter. So we all need a structure and a container right now for our lives, for our ambitions. And of course, we have to fill it with things. We still need to fill it with life, and we still need to fill it with the kind of the sweetness. And you know, Saturn's or Capricorn's opposing sign is Cancer, and Cancer is sort of that really kind of that nourishing energy, that water, that balm that can kind of sit in the container of Capricorn. But you know, Saturn is, we have one of those check-ins with Saturn right now. So it's a day for commitments, it's a day for restructuring, it's a day for seeing how this week aligns with these bigger milestones. I actually had a personal story. As a Scorpio, or rather as a Sagittarius rising, Saturn is turning retrograde in my sign of communication, which is Aquarius. Aquarius is the third sign of Sagittarius. And it's so much right now about voice. You know, you all hearing me, the seriousness that I'm taking of my voice, and the commitment I am making to my voice, and commitments to communication, and also the commitment to my work. And I had a really amazing email from a client that I woke up to on Sunday morning, where my type of work is very particular. It's astrology, but I call it astrology plus, meaning it's like more of a holistic view of things. And you all have to understand that you have a birth chart, this chart that's formed the moment that you're born. And it's sort of like the house, it's the structure, Saturn. And then you live in that chart, and that part is you, the essence of you, your personality, your free will, but all of you lives inside of that chart. So when I work with somebody, it's about getting into the different parts of you, and how do you open up the different parts of you? How do you transform? How do you awaken? How do you heal? So you can live in this chart differently. You can live in this house differently. And I got this really amazing, I ask questions when I work with a client. It's meant to open up consciousness and open up awareness. And I asked her a very simple question during our time together in our session. And she said that question and the answer that she gave at the time, she realized wasn't the real answer. And she went back on her own and reflected, and the real answer has changed the course of her life. So it's really, you know, when I write the horoscopes or I write the daily updates, I put questions. And maybe sometimes you glance over them, but these are questions that you're meant to ask yourself, to reflect on. I know somebody will journal, use them as journal prompts. So really, hopefully that's something that you now can look at these questions a little differently. How a simple question, if you sit with it and you see what comes up and what answer, and maybe as an answer you've never considered, that is your, that's your nourishment. That's really powerful stuff. So anyway, I digress. Let's look at the rest of the astrology this week. Mercury is now in Gemini. Mercury is home in Gemini, and it will spend the next couple of weeks in Gemini until the end of the month. Mercury is about communication. It needs to take in, it needs to try new things, it needs to learn. And over the next couple of weeks, you know, Mercury is actively and effortlessly doing that. So we're feeling a need to have more experiences, to learn, to communicate, to listen, to talk, to chat, to move. Mercury is very restless in Gemini. We want to move. We need to pick up the phone and talk to somebody. So that might be some interesting things for everybody in whatever part of the world you're in right now, whatever sort of state with the pandemic that you're in. Also, 2 days from now, on the 13th of May, Mars goes into Pisces. So we have another planet that changes signs. Mars is in Pisces a little bit of an interesting animal, because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It is about, inherently, about surrender, about feeling, about intuition, spirituality, compassion, art, music. And here comes Mars, this planet that is about action. It is sometimes aggressive, but it's vitality and it's the motivation we need in order to make things happen. It goes into this very spiritual sign. So on one hand, it's great if you're channeling Mars, if you're channeling your actions towards Piscean things, art, music, dancing, healing, meditation, reflection, retreat. But it also means that Mars, the planet of get up and go, is not really going to have a lot of get up and go for the next 5-6 weeks. It's meant to be a little bit more of a slower pace. It's meant to be a time where we can't push our agenda. But it means that, again, if we turn our attention more towards spiritual pursuits, it's just better suited for Mars and Pisces. You know, Mars will start to meet up with Neptune throughout the month. It's a Mars that has to learn a lesson around surrender. Also, you know, Mars will go into Aries on the 27th of June. And just FYI, Mars is going to spend 6 months in Aries because it's going to go retrograde in September. There's that month again. And we're, you know, if you feel a little sluggish while Mars is in Pisces, or you feel like things aren't quite moving as fast or in the direction that you want to go in, well, just wait till Mars and Aries. Mars and Aries is like gas in the car. It's like, you know, 0 to 60, you know, in a minute. It's a very fast, active, vital, but also can be a little combative and aggressive energy. So really take in the lessons of Mars in Pisces. It's a Mars that has to have some spiritual wisdom, because Pisces is a very, you know, wisdom, you know, it's ruled by Jupiter. So this is a Mars that has to sort of know how to use its Mars, that it can't always run so fast, or to use it to influence in certain ways. Also on the 13th, Venus turns retrograde. Yes, another planet turning retrograde. Venus will turn retrograde at 21 degrees of Gemini. It will be retrograde for 40 days. Venus is always retrograde 40 days, and that is a very sacred number in different traditions. There's this time of pulling back and needing to reflect. It's a very mystical and alchemical time. Venus will be retrograde until, checking my list, the 25th of June, and it's doing it in Gemini. And Venus is about connection. It's about socialization. It's about relationships, but it's also about design. It's also about aesthetic and beauty. And it's also a sign that teaches us about value, about currency, the worth of things, even if the worth is ourselves. So when it turns retrograde, we're entering a 40-day period where we have to have a second look at value, have a second look at relationships, have a second look at how where our currency is. And Venus in Gemini, as the ruling planet of Taurus, it's really like, how do we accumulate things? Because, you know, Gemini as Taurus's second sign really wants to accumulate and take things in. So I think on one level, there's a need to really take a second look at how we're consuming things, how we're gathering, what resources we have, the value that we place on certain resources. Venus retrograde is also classic for old lovers, old flames, even old relationships, even as a friend, coming back into our lives. So there might be a need to tie up loose ends. There's a sense of karmic work when a planet is retrograde. So something from a past relationship comes up. Maybe if it's not the person literally coming up, it's a need to sort of work on that old issue in another way. So Venus turns retrograde see what sort of old relationship stuff comes up, who was popping into your life. If you get into a relationship at this time, do not panic. Sometimes when we get into a relationship with Venus is retrograde, we have to work out an old story, and sometimes maybe even a past life story with another person. Sometimes it may mean the person after the planet turns retrograde, like we're done. But that's not to say that everybody, if you get into a relationship, it's not going to last past the retrograde. But just do your work. There's a sense of needing to rework value, rework connection, and to sort of get a different perspective, because Gemini is an air sign. So there's a sense of that we don't have all the information right now. We might need to wait until Venus turns direct in June before we have all the information. And Venus, by the way, isn't going to leave Gemini until August. So we got a long time of Venus in Gemini, and I actually quite like Venus in Gemini. It's very playful, it's very fun, it's very chatty, it's very breezy. So it'll be interesting to see what this dynamic is, this sort of re-evaluation of all things Gemini while Venus is in retrograde. I have Venus retrograde, so I'm totally used to it just by living, although mine's in Scorpio. On the 14th, the next day, Jupiter turns retrograde. So it's, Jupiter is a planet that teaches us about the world. It teaches us about ourselves. It's a planet of education. It's a planet of travel. It's a planet of knowledge, philosophy, religion. So all these, we have to get a bigger perspective of things right now. And Jupiter very much talks about faith. What are the things that we put our faith into? And it's been in Capricorn since December 2nd, so not that long. And Jupiter spends a year in each sign of the zodiac. And Jupiter is sort of, we need to get a new perspective or a new sort of look at things differently in all things Capricorn, the structures, our commitments, where we are in authority, the world. So we sort of see some of the world, the levers in the world sort of change direction. Capricorn is a sign of government, it's a sign of power, it's a sign of structure. So Jupiter is turning retrograde. We need to get a new perspective. But again, Jupiter as the sign of faith and wisdom really does want us to get back to seeing, experiencing the world. So maybe you're experiencing this retrograde as a need to learn about the world, learn about government, learn about history. It's also a Capricorn thing. So really enriching our sense of the world and our sense of history during this time. We've got a couple of big aspects going into the weekend. We've got Sun trine Jupiter, Sun trine Pluto. Those are trines, which means that we have an opportunity, but I find it very interesting that we've got these big shifts going on. This means we're also wrapping up Taurus season. And Taurus season has been a time when we've needed to really get back to what really matters, get back to what we value, get back to the earth, to experience the earth in a sense of renewal. And so as the sun gets to the end of Taurus, an earth sign, it makes what's called a trine to Jupiter and Pluto. So the end of this week might be a time when we're really focused on money and finance and worth and assets and value. Do we have enough? I know there's a lot of things going on in the world right now, and maybe this energy gives us an opportunity. So, I've had so many interesting conversations with people and clients, and I know a lot of you are going through difficult times right now, but I'm also seeing some silver linings with some of the conversations that I'm having. You're turning towards new perspectives. You're making the shift into a new career and using this time to instigate. But I love Taurus. Taurus really puts us back in touch with element earth, and element earth is about taste, it's about pleasure, it's about really enjoying being in the physical body the best that we can. So I know that we came off a really intense Scorpio full moon last week. I don't know if anything came up for you all, but there was a lot of things getting triggered, a lot of deep emotions. People were kind of feeling a lot of deep feelings, but I'm just kind of looking at the comments, and Taurus time has been very calming for Zama. And Jody says, yay, silver linings. I don't know, maybe this is the part of me that's Sag rising. There's a part of me that does look always for those silver linings. So I think that there is a silver lining in this time, and I'm just having really interesting conversations with people about how they're re-evaluating everything. It's almost maybe in anticipation of these retrogrades, especially with Venus retrograde, re-evaluating what we thought was important in February, or up until March, that maybe isn't important anymore. I don't know. Everybody is in a different time right now, but I've got one client who's decided to go become a doula, end-of-life doula. I've got another client that's looking to really start living her life for the first time. I've got another client who is using this time to be very soul healing, very personally healing. But somebody said that they survived COVID, and yeah, you do need to rest. And I do really hope each and every one of you is safe out there, because I know that I've had some other people in my life also have COVID. I'm very lucky. I have a roof over my head. I'm baking bread. I'm using this time to work. Actually, it's not that different than what I normally do. I already work a lot, but there's a lot of things kind of in the oven right now, so to speak. And I think that when Mars gets into Aries come the end of June, that's when we have a little bit more of a forward movement time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. My kind of concern is when Mars turns retrograde in September, on September 13th, that Mars then has to kind of stop. It can't move forward anymore. And what is that going to mean for the world? Last week we also saw the node shift signs. Went from Cancer and Capricorn, where it had been for 18 months, and now it's in Gemini and Sagittarius. And there's a difference of feeling. I don't know if you all are feeling it since last week. I think it was the 6th or 5th of May that we had the signs change. And I certainly am feeling that Gemini restlessness start to move and to push and to pull, like need to get out, need to walk around the neighborhood, need to get some fresh air. Gemini is, by the way, about the neighborhood. It's about our local surroundings. Before, we had the North Node in Cancer, and the North Node Cancer is about home, it's about family. And so we've had a little bit of a collective shift in the last week, but do keep in mind that we're a few weeks away from eclipse season. So for some signs, your Geminis, your Sagittariuses, or your Geminis or Sagittarius risings, or your Capricorns and your Cancers, also the rising, we're about to go into eclipses. So on June 5th, we're going to have a lunar eclipse at 15 degrees of Sagittarius. This is the first in a series that's going to last for 18 months. It means we're starting to see, move into this new time. The South Node is in Sagittarius. We need to actually start to examine what we put our faith in and what we believe in and what our truth is, and if it really truly is true. Because there's a need to get new perspective and get new information with the North Node now. And Gemini, we're going to be learning a lot. We need to educate ourselves over the next coming 18 months. So this eclipse starts that series, and then on the 21st of June, we have a solar eclipse in Cancer. That is the last one in a series that began in July of 2018. So it sort of brings to a head and brings to a close this story. And then on the 5th of July, we have a lunar eclipse in Capricorn, and this one also brings to an end a story from the start of 2019. So we're in these sort of shifting times right now, and it's not uncommon for eclipse energy to start to manifest a month before. So you might see, especially if you're a Cancer, a Capricorn, a Gemini, a Sag, that life is sort of moving. And my metaphor for eclipses, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's eclipses are like the curtain coming down on one act or one scene in our life, and the curtain comes up and it's a new scene, new actors, new set, new players, or it's a new scene and it's kind of continuing, but it's a different part of the story. And sometimes that change can be dramatic and sometimes not. So that's just kind of wanted to plant some seeds for the coming few weeks, because we're right on the edge of eclipse season. So things are moving, things are shaking. I really hope that each and every one of you is well. One of the things that I'm cooking up on my end is that I'm working with a friend, a very dear friend of mine, to start sort of like a beta part of a healing collective, a collective of healers and different practitioners and people, you know, teaching different webinars and stuff. So this is what's called SaTerra Collective. The link is in the show notes to learn more about what this membership collective is. There's ways to get discounts on services from other practitioners, whether it's with crystal therapy, myself, or other practitioners. It's a membership portal, so do check it out. Ask me any questions. Again, we are in the beginning stages of building this thing, getting ready for eclipses, I guess. Yeah, that is your look at this week's astrology. I'm just kind of flipping through the comments. Thank you all for giving me your feedback. Yeah, we're in some interesting times. I really do hope you all are safe. Really listen to what Saturn is trying to tell you right now on what you need to learn, what you need to work towards, and what you need to commit to. Check out the link in the show notes, Saturn in Aquarius, sign by sign. Also, you can read more about Saturn in Aquarius in general. And as always, thank you for watching and listening. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, on IGTV, or listening on Spotify, I thank you very much. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm Empowering Astro, on Facebook, Empowering Astrology, or on my website, empoweringastrology.com. Of course, you can book a consultation with me. I love working with you one-on-one. Again, I'm a holistic astrologer. I use astrology and psychic medium work to work with your spirit guides, to work with you, and to work with your soul to get you in the best alignment with the truth of your chart. So thank you so much for your time, and I will see you all next week. Bye.